nothing Raiders in the game, and they pretty much never looked back and won 17-10. Derek Carr throwing a pivotal touchdown in the game, and even with Carey grabbing Harry Douglas in the end zone on the Titans' final play, and that should have been flagged on Oakland. That could have really brought about a game-tying touchdown. So the Titans did get screwed in that regard by the refs, but they lost 17-10. Now, Ravens, Jaguars. Every time, twice at home, Jaguars have a chance to win. Talk about a team that could have been 2-1. They turn it over on downs. Week 1 against Green Bay, they lose 27-23. They turn it over on a stupid interception by Blake Bortles. They lose 19-17.
Them's the breaks. I mean, at least Jacksonville is keeping the games close, but they're showing that they're not really ready yet to try and make clutch plays down the stretch. It's going to take a little bit more game experience for Blake Bortles and the other youngsters to try and really get that big signature victory down the road.
How about the fact that the Falcons scored in their first 5 possessions allowed by that Saints horrendous secondary, and they end up losing 45-32. Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman are becoming a great dynamic duo in the backfield together. The Jets, of course,
from the sublime to the ridiculous. Go ahead.
Yep. Fitzpatrick throws a career-high 6 interceptions. They get 2 lost fumbles. They end up losing 24-3. It was pitiful. Marcus Peters had 2 of those interceptions.
Now can we start to admit that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be not going to be the answer for them at quarterback? I'm telling you, this guy has had such a checkered past. There's a reason why he's bounced around from one team to another in 11 years, almost 12 years in the league.
And talk about another sublime to ridiculous game. The Giants, badly timed penalties, 12 of them for over 100 yards, and 2 nasty interceptions in the fourth quarter, including the one that Quinn Dunbar got in the end zone. And that was after a beautiful catch by Odell Beckham taking it to the Redskins' 15-yard line. And how about that late-game hit by Olivier Vernon that kept the scoring drive alive for the Redskins? All those mistakes hurt the Giants in the end. They ended up losing 29-27. At least they were more competitive than the Jets were and scored more than the Jets.
Yeah, but it's still a loss in under the L column, and I can't help but think of all those stupid mistakes that they made. The special teams, first of all, was a cruel joke. That's number 1. Number 2, costing themselves superb field position twice because of dumb penalties. Weston Richburg wound up getting himself kicked out of the game because of 2 unnecessary roughness penalties.
You know, he's the first to be subjected to that new rule.
And just to give you an idea, Josh Norman wound up getting fined $34,000 for his illegal hit on Sterling Shepard in that game. And what happens? Odell Beckham Jr. also gets fined for his antics. And he's already drawn a lot of heat from Ben McAdoo, saying that he needs to tone it down a little bit. And
tone it down from the fact that he hits his helmet against a kicking that ends up smacking him back, you know.
Yeah, and that became the subject of a lot of memes on social media. And what does OBJ do? He says he's going to keep on being the person that he is. This just goes to show you that this guy has a lot of growing up to do.
And now we go from week 3 to week 4 quickly. Packers off this week. Really good start to 2-1 right now. Let's see how things go for the rest of the year. And the Eagles at 3-0. When will Carson Wentz throw that elusive first pick?
Well, knowing him, he doesn't want to turn the ball over, but let's see what he can do against a division opponent, because that's where this kid's really going to make his money.
And now we go to the Queen City. Last night, the Cincinnati Bengals hosted the Miami Dolphins on Thursday Night Football, which is becoming a tradition. And A.J. Green had the performance of a lifetime, 173 yards, 8 receptions, and a big touchdown play. And the fact that Miami were leading 7-3 after that Kenny Stills touchdown catch, gave it up. Gave up 19 straight points and lost 22-7.
It wasn't much of it's not much on the scoreboard there, but give the Bengal defense a lot of credit. They really frustrated Ryan Tannehill to like there was no tomorrow. Not only that, but he wound up frustrating the Dolphin fans even more by committing a couple more interceptions.
How about the fact that A.J. Green had more yards than the entire Dolphins offense heading into the third quarter?
That's an indictment of the Dolphin offense in general. You have questionable play at quarterback, a rather hodgepodge running game. We don't know who the number one receiver is going to be. And the offensive line, I couldn't even begin to tell you what their issue is. There's a lot to be talked about and a lot to be discussed on how to improve that Dolphin offense.
And now we start with Monday night. Giants visit Minnesota. This is a big game for both teams. You got a 3-0 Vikings team that is great on defense, progressively giving up less points every week. They're one of the top 5 in the league in giving up as the least amount of yards per game and on third down conversion rates. And on sacks, too, especially last week with that 8-sack performance. The Giants only has to keep that in mind, especially with Everson Griffin possibly trying to breathe down on Eli Manning's neck. So this week, the Giants O-line, their job, protect Eli and give him enough time to throw it to Shepard, Beckham, and Cruz. I want to see Victor Cruz this week get more involved in the playbook like he did in week 1. If they do that, I think they could win. But I'll be honest, even without Adrian Peterson, I think Minnesota takes this and they will win this game.
This is such an intriguing matchup between these two teams. I'm curious to see what that giant trio of receivers can do against that Vikings secondary, which has been very strong, and the Giant offensive line, which has had their issues in the past. They may have a long, long night against the Viking down linemen. Not only that, but the Giants have very, very rarely played well in Minneapolis, whether it's at the old Metrodome or Metropolitan Stadium, and now they're making their debut at the new stadium that the Vikings have. Could it be that the Giants finally get themselves a big win in Minneapolis? The last big win that I know of that they had in Minneapolis 30 years ago, the famous 4th and 17 play that Phil Simms completed.
Well, we'll see.
This time, let's see what the Giants down linemen can do against Sam Bradford.
Make a pick, though. One pick. Who you would pick to win this game? I know you.
The Vikings are just too tough at home. The Giants don't play well in Minneapolis. You figure it out.
I think you just said Minnesota. All right. The Seattle Seahawks coming back to New York. The last time they were here, remember Super Bowl 48? They won 43-8 against Denver. This time they play the New York Jets. This is a defense that gives up a league-low 250.3 yards, going up against an offense that was anemic in Kansas City, especially Fitzpatrick with those 6 career-high interceptions. And when you have a guy like Richard Sherman, who's probably going to be guarding Brandon Marshall at times, but then Marshall will switch it up. He'll go to the other side of the line, which Sherman never does. So maybe that could play a factor for the Jets this week. And the fact that Decker is out this week.
Yeah.
So the X factor to me is Austin Severian-Jenkins for the Jets offense.
Mm-hmm. It's time for the Jets to start making use of their tight ends because they've had a weakness there for quite a few years now. Don't be surprised if you see the Seahawks do a couple of double teams against Marshall at times, especially with Decker out. Plus, I worry about that Jet defense, especially what they could do against an athletic guy like Russell Wilson. If Wilson can't find anybody down the field, he's going to take the ball himself, and that's only going to make the Jets down linemen huff and puff quite a bit. This is going to look really, really ugly once they step on the field. And this is such a crucial game for the Jets right now. If they fall to 1-3, all bets are off for the last 3 quarters of the season, no matter who they play against.
And this is against Russell Wilson, who's had both his legs hurt this year. Week 1 against Miami, third quarter, Ndamukong Suh rolls on his right leg. This past week against San Fran, his left leg. He's running out of legs. You know, it's just the offensive line for the Seahawks has to do there's been such a turnaround on that O-line. They have to do a better job protecting But sometimes, he's the type of player, when you're running quarterback, you do take the risks of possibly getting rolled and hurt. Unfortunately, it comes with the territory.
Yep.
But, let's see with that leg, how effective he'll be able to run this week. That's the other thing to look at in this game. At the end of the day, that Seahawks defense is the reason why I'm picking Seattle. There's no way the Jets win, and I'm going to that game with my mom. So we're going to be watching a loss this day. As for Sunday night, you got Kansas City, Pittsburgh. This should be intriguing. Pittsburgh got smacked in the mouth in Philadelphia. They're coming home. They're pissed. They're upset, and they want to take it out on somebody, and it could be Kansas City.
This is another intriguing matchup. Two teams with really solid play at quarterback, although I give the Steelers the edge with Roethlisberger, but they're also very fine-tuned defensively. In this case, I think it's going to be the team that plays the better defense that winds up winning this game.
If I had to pick, I'm going with Pittsburgh. You got the debut Le'Veon Bell coming back this week after that. After that suspension, and you also have the 3-game suspension that he had, and on top of that, with him, DeAngelo Williams, they're really going to make it a nightmare for that KC defense this week. Sorry, but the other intriguing matchup, Marcus Peters versus Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Watch for that. All right, now we got the next game. We got the Buffalo Bills heading to New England. Do you know in the years that New England has been at Gillette Stadium, when they lead at the half, they are 77-0.
That's called protecting your home field, and that's also called putting the pressure on your opponent when you have a lead at the half.
Rex Ryan, of course, couldn't resist opening his mouth as usual when it comes to Bill Belichick. Remember, I'm not going to kiss his rings comment when he was with the Jets. He always has something to say. He can never stop saying anything when it comes to Bill Belichick. Stop it. It doesn't work, man. Your words are really not being heard right now by Bill Belichick. All he's doing is like one ear out the other because he's just looking forward to taking your team out this week. Granted, Buffalo had a good victory this week against Arizona. That was against Arizona. This is a much different monster you're going up against. There's no way you're going to beat New England. They could be without Garoppolo, Brissett. Doesn't even matter. What I love about New England, they adjust to the teams they play.
Yeah.
And New England will adjust this week.
Notice the Patriots have been much better defensively the first 3 games.
I know. That's due to Matt Patricia. He's one of the most underrated coordinators in the league who will be a coach. And Josh McDaniels, with the exotic plays he's coming up with, he will be a head coach again. There are talks about him going for head coaching. Now the next game, Carolina, Atlanta. This is a huge NFC South matchup for both teams right here. Carolina, to start 1-3 would be terrible compared to what they did last year. Atlanta, Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman really having a great rapport with each other. But now you got to worry about the likes of Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis on that D-line for the Panthers. I'm going with the Panthers to win this week. I think Kelvin Benjamin has to be involved this week. Look for him to get off the line of scrimmage against Desmond Trufant. He's going to beat him at the line of scrimmage. He's going to make some big vertical plays. I'm going with the Panthers. L.A. Rams. I know it still says St. Louis. I got to find an L.A. Rams pennant somewhere.
Yeah.
Going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Who would have thought the L.A. Rams, after 3 games, would have sole possession of the NFC West?
I certainly didn't, especially considering the hodgepodge that they had at quarterback before Jared Goff. But at least they're acquitting themselves a little bit well, mostly on the defensive end. I mean, it didn't say much in the Tampa game because they were torched for 32 points, but they really exploded against a Tampa team that was kind of hurting defensively. But let's see what they can do against a really desperate team like Arizona.
I want to see Todd Gurley really have a big game this week. I think he will. Look out for Todd Gurley if I'm the Arizona Cardinals defensive line. And Carson Palmer, if you really want to keep your starting job, you cannot throw 4 picks like you did last week. You have to make better plays and make use of Larry Fitzgerald. This week, I'm going with the Rams. Cowboys, 49ers, legendary rivalry. I mean legendary, these two teams.
20 years ago, that would have been the game of the century. But now, you got a 49er team that's basically in rebuilding mode. I mean, in real rebuilding mode. They've lost guys to retirement and to free agency, going up against a Cowboy team that, quite frankly, is playing well, but they're not without their problems either. And it's got nothing to do with the quarterback. It's got a lot to do with Des Bryant. Not only is he hurt, he continues to be a locker room absence, if you ask me, much less a locker room cancer. He's not even showing up to meetings.
Which is really saying something right there about his character and his personality. But you know what? Even without him, they have 2 words, Dak Prescott, and another 2 words, Ezekiel Elliott. 2 rookies who are making a huge difference for this team. And by the way, the matchup to look for, you got Tyron Smith coming back from that back injury, going up against Ahmad Brooks, the legendary linebacker for the 49ers. That matchup right there will determine who wins this game. I'm going with Tyron Smith. I'm going with the Cowboys. They got this.
The Cowboys have based their history on dynamic quarterback, running back, receiver trios. In the past, they had Don Meredith, Roger Staubach with Tony Dorsett, Troy Aikman, of course, with Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin, and of course, Danny White with Tony Dorsett as well, and of course, Drew Pearson. Now, could we be seeing the future trio this time with Dak Prescott handing off to Ezekiel Elliott and throwing the ball to Antonio Bryant? Granted, there's still Tony Romo, who's waiting to come back from injury, but the Cowboys have their quarterback of the future right here.
Or Cole Beasley, who's really become a factor. He's actually become one of Prescott's favorite targets to throw to. He has, like Wentz, he has yet to throw a pick on 99 attempts. Raiders visiting the Ravens. And you know what's going to be intriguing? Kelechi Osemele, who used to be a former Ravens offensive line, signed in the offseason a 5-year deal to be with the Raiders. So he's coming home to try to get to his old team, and he's going to have to worry about Elvis Dumervil this week, who's making his debut. So he's going to have to really do a good job protecting Derek Carr. Remember last year, Derek Carr had the game-winning touchdown pass to Seth Roberts with 26 seconds to go. But that was a Ravens depleted team without Flacco, without Terrell Suggs and Forsett and Smith, a lot of important players. They're all back this year. So this is not the same Ravens team from last year. This Ravens team is ready to play, and they are going to be dancing all over the Raiders. I'm going with the Ravens.
Yeah, I'd like to see exactly how Derek Carr can do against a budding contender like the Ravens. I mean, he's been able to do well against teams like the Titans, but against a potential contender like the Ravens, let's see what happens here.
Broncos, Buccaneers. This is really, I feel bad for James. What happened to Jameis Winston week 1 really was a revelation. Week 2, he really, week 1 he wasn't, he was good. Week 2, he was sad. Week 3, worse.
And don't let the final score fool you either.
Yeah, especially that third. And they're going up against Trevor Siemian, who is now becoming the second coming, possibly, of Peyton Manning at this, even though it's...
There's only one Peyton Manning. Let's not kid ourselves here. But Trevor Siemian is playing good football right now. And he's got the luxury of working with a good receiving tandem and a good combination in the backfield, and also great defense.
Oh, amazing. Even without DeMarcus Ware, you still got, Von Miller, one of the best linebackers and pass rushers in the league, and this is a guy who was deserving of that contract he was given. Going against a Jameis Winston squad now that is just reeling from these 2 losses. What are we going to see? The turnover of Jameis Winston? Are we going to see the proficient Jameis Winston? Time will only tell, but I'll be honest, I think good Jameis comes back in style, and I'm going with an upset pick. I'm going with the Buccaneers to win at home, upset. Now, how about a cathartic return home?
And a lethargic team.
Yep. The 0-3 Saints, led by Drew Brees, for the first time will be in San Diego since 2005 when he tore his labrum and ended his career as a Chargers quarterback, leading to the era of Phillip Rivers. Then he goes to New Orleans in limbo, not knowing if his career is going to come back again. What does he do? He leads the league in passing yards 6 times as a Saint, 8 Pro Bowl appearances, and a Super Bowl victory to boot.
It's these things happen for a reason. The fact that Drew Brees basically played out a Hall of Fame resume in New Orleans, nobody would have known that for sure. Nobody would have known if he would have duplicated those numbers if he had remained in San Diego. It just so happens that Brees has basically reconstructed all by himself that franchise. Of course, things have gotten really, really tough for this team the last, I'd say,
few years,
3 or 4 years or so.
The defense is just awful. Even with Dennis Allen running it, that's still, he's running this defense into the ground. Sean Payton, it has to do a better job with this defense, especially the secondary with the plays that they've given up. San Diego could have been 2-1. They really gave it up in Indianapolis. This is a game for both teams where really 0-4 versus 1-3. Both teams can't afford to lose this game. This is pivotal for their seasons to at least have some life left. And I'm going with the Saints to pull off an upset victory.
There you go.
And for Drew Brees to have a revelation of a game.
Mm-hmm.
Lions, Bears. Originally, I was actually going to pick upset with Chicago, but then I realized.
But then you realized it's the Chicago Bears, who are dreadful at quarterback, dreadful on the offensive line, even worse on defense. What does this team have going for them? They have a good slot of receivers, though. Alshon Jeffrey has
not realized his potential this year. And you know what? Kevin White is also in that same boat, too.
Yeah.
And this is the debut of Jordan Howard. He's going to have the performance of the century for this Bears team to finally get their first victory. I don't see it happening. I see Detroit and Matthew Stafford tearing them to pieces, including that injury-depleted defense.
Yep. This is their golden opportunity to be a 500 team, which is really saying a lot for the Lions.
How about Titans-Texans? All right, AFC South rivalry matchup. Texans without J.J. Watt. This is going to be the first test without him. I think they'll pass it against Marcus Mariota, the turnover quarterback. 7 turnovers, 4 interceptions, 3 lost fumbles on the year. I have him on my fantasy team, unfortunately.
And because of him, you're probably in the bottomless pit that is last place in your fantasy league, I presume.
Thank you very much for that reminder. I'm 0-3. Do you want to really talk about how bad I am?
Oh, brother.
I know, but the fact of the matter remains, DeMarco Murray is actually great. That secondary has to do a better job. And this is a Dick LeBeau defense. This is what kills me about this team. And they got screwed on that call last week against Oakland. Doesn't really matter. I think Brock Osweiler's team is going to break out of the funk they had last Thursday. They're going to score points on the board. Will Fuller's going to have a 2-touchdown performance. Texans. Jolly London, England, early game, Colts, Jaguars. I'm going to have to be up at 9:30 watching this game on CBS.
Which reminds me, apparently there has been talk of the NFL playing a regular season game in China. Unfortunately, you can officially sack those plans, for lack of a better word. They're not going to be playing any games in China anytime soon. But London and possibly Toronto are still in the mix for future international games.
Well, Toronto has always been there hosting a lot of Bill games in the past. I remember when the Bills had one home game slated for Toronto. In fact, Bon Jovi and his partners who were considering buying the Bills were considering moving the team to Toronto, which got the ire of Bills fans online. Yeah. How can you do that? But anyway, in this particular game, the Jaguars had 2 chances to win. Now this, if they have yet another chance and they blow it, this could be the end for Gus Bradley's tenure as head coach of the Jaguars. Like, his tenure is on life support.
Yeah. And the last thing the Jaguars can afford is an 0-4 start, as if they haven't had enough of those in their franchise history. But let's face facts. Jacksonville is just not ready to be a contender yet, and the Colts have designs on winning a Super Bowl down the road.
And here's the crazy thing. Bortles last year was second in the league with 35 touchdowns, despite leading the league with 18 interceptions. They led the league with more passing plays of 20-plus yards with 72 on the season. They have the potential on offense to win games, as we saw in the Green Bay game. And they had a chance to win against Baltimore, and they keep blowing it. They have to look at the game film from those games and realize that if you have another opportunity, you cannot blow these chances because you won't get many. And think about your coach yet again. Shad Khan is going to be at the game with that weird mustache he has.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Well, it's not that weird. I've seen crazier mustaches. But I'm going with the Colts to win this. I can't in good conscience.
And finally, we bring up the rear, emphasis on bringing up the rear, with the Browns against the Redskins. All I can say about this game is, as if I haven't been doing enough yawning already, the Browns are a cruel joke of a professional sports franchise right now. They are literally they could be the single worst team. And that's saying a lot considering that there's also the Bears in the NFL. This could be a chance for the Redskins to get to 500 right now, especially considering the Redskins, if you can believe this, are actually better at quarterback.
I know. In this particular game, they are. Come on, Cody Kessler in Washington going up against. But you know what? I'll tell you this, folks. That defense, without D'Angelo Hall in the secondary,
they're going to be really vulnerable.
And Bashad Breeland, and the fact that Terrell Pryor can do almost everything but do the laundry for this team. I think because of that, the Washington Redskins are still going to win.
Yes, Washington Redskins are still going to win. And dare I say that there's going to be an 0-16 season involving the Browns because they're that bad?
It could be with Chicago. I think they both, we could see yet another starting quarterback for Cleveland.
And to think, the Browns could have had Carson Wentz.
I know. Isn't that and they gave it up.
Yep. Literally gave it up.
Now, the big game of the week, we mentioned college football. Clemson against Louisville. This could change the landscape of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
This could probably change the landscape of the national title picture, too, because you've got two really good teams with really good play at quarterback. Of course, Clemson has Deshaun Watson. Louisville, of all people, has probably one of the greatest stories this season.
In Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson, a kid from South Florida who basically was an afterthought going into this season. I mean, he played well at times last year, but this year he's just taking people by surprise.
Two top 10 teams going up against each other in Death Valley. This is going to be one heck of a game at Memorial Stadium.
And if I can add a side note in college football, unfortunately, somebody got their walking papers early this week because Les Miles was fired by LSU.
I know, especially after their game against Auburn. They just the athletic director and the boosters couldn't take it any longer. They decided to let him go. Danny Etling will still be the quarterback. And guess who the interim coach is? For, yet again, Ed Odrin. He had the same opportunity with USC. They didn't hire him. But if Ed Odrin can have a good victory this week for LSU, who knows? That can go from interim to permanent.
And I've already heard rumors about what Les Miles is going to do next if he doesn't go to television. I've heard him connected to Kentucky. I've heard him connected to Purdue. And I've also heard him connected to even Mississippi State. But right now, probably the best thing for him to do is take a TV job, because I'll tell you right now, Kentucky is a dead-end job if you're a college football coach in the Southeastern Conference. Kentucky has zero winning tradition. Their recruiting classes are very, very questionable. I would steer clear of a job like that because that means he would still have to go up against Nick Saban.
How about some of the other games this week? You got Stanford, Washington tonight in the Pac-12. Then in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, you have the Badgers versus the Wolverines.
Supremacy in the Big Ten right there.
And how about supremacy in the SEC East? You got the Georgia Bulldogs and the Tennessee Volunteers on Sunday late afternoon.
And Tennessee has surprised a lot of people this year. Their young quarterback has really grown by leaps and bounds, but I've heard this kid is not a pro prospect. But first things first, Tennessee's 4-0. They got the Georgia game coming up. If Tennessee can win this game, they can set themselves up really well for a shot at least the Eastern Division.
And it could end up being Tennessee-Alabama at the end of the year for the SEC title,
Which would be a really great season in my eyes for Tennessee, but knowing how the Vols fans and the Orange Nation are, They want that SEC title and another national championship. It's not going to happen this year, but they've grown so much in the last couple of years.
I think there's possibility there, and I think Wisconsin has been a big surprise too. Well, with 10 seconds left, Jamie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And folks, we'll see you here next week for another episode of the Blitz on CTV. Good night, Staten Island. Peace.
You can fade us out, man.